Well, welcome to spring 2022. I hope somebody out there is optimistic about this year. Anyway, this is going to be the personal finance course. I'm not pessimistic, believe me, but I do think that things are changing quick, and especially in the realm of personal finances and economy and all the rest of that in general. But we'll cover that as we go through the course. This is just going to be kind of an introduction. We will talk about some of the academic material. We'll look at the syllabus and we'll just kind of go through an overview of how the course is going to be set. Um, One of the first things in terms of lectures, you can pretty much expect every week. Well, not expected, and there will be a lecture put out every week. So there'll be two parts to it. There'll be the PowerPoint thing that you can just look through, and then there'll be the YouTube part that will be published. Um, the YouTube part will be fairly important, especially when it comes to the tests and stuff, because we'll talk about a bunch of different material, but we'll do a review on YouTube and some other things to kind of point you in the right direction in terms of testing and the rest of that. So the combination of the two. So a couple things you'll see in Blackboard each week is you'll see the file for the lecture. You'll see a link to wherever this YouTube ends up. You'll typically see a second little small video, not done by me, but just grabbed from YouTube that kind of covers the topic that we're looking at, and whatever 3 to 5 minute kind of thing. You look at that, and it hopefully hits some points I didn't talk about, or gives some examples, and then you just say, oh yeah, that good video, bad video, whatever. It's just tested for completion. You get 5 points just by saying you watched it. So you don't have to do a lengthy explanation. You're going to get 5 points regardless, if as long as you submit that part. Then there'll also be some homework. Typically, that'll be once a week as well. But the homework is turned in as a batch assignment prior to each exam. So there's going to be two exams, the midterm and the final. That'll be a large part of it. We'll look at the syllabus here in a second, and then in addition to that, there's a term paper. Everybody hates a term paper, but it's actually pretty useful because it's kind of a summation of your pseudo personal plan. What I mean is pseudo is that I don't want a bunch of your own personal information, but and to tell you the truth, your personal information isn't typically at this point in your life for most of you is probably not even relevant, because if you're a traditional college student, your financial situation is driven by being a student, and your finances are not such. The only thing you can really do at this point in your life is just not get yourself into a tremendous amount of student debt. But other than that, your investments and stuff, you're actually investing in yourself, by virtue of going to school and all that. So um, we'll normally, fast forward yourself like 5 years into the future, and then you'll write your term report as if you're out immersed in your career, and it's just going to address how you or somebody in a similar situation would work on investments, work on insurance, work on purchasing a home if that's part of your plan, and the rest of that. And so it should be pretty useful, not only as an assignment for the course, but also for kind of giving you a template or a plan for how you're going forward. Because you can obviously go through life without a plan, and that's not going to be the optimum solution. But obviously, a plan that forecasts 5 years out is not going to be executed verbatim, but it will give you some things to think about, and then you're modifying an existing plan rather than trying to do it on the fly and basically screwing it up. So anyway, those are things done. Now there's other students. I realize that some may be hell my age, some may be more of a career person than a student, which is I think is kind of unfortunate. If you get a chance to enjoy college, great times. But again, I know the realities of COVID. College life is probably not as vibrant as it could be right now. But anyway, you'll endure. Anyway, so for some of you though, the plan may be where you're at right now, and go ahead. But again, just say dude named Bob or whatever. I don't need your personal information. I'm not trying to, get into your personal information, and it's not obviously good to have that out roaming around on the web anyway. So anyway, we'll talk more about this stuff as we go along. Okay, me, I raise Vizslas. I have a pretty good sized property, pretty good sized ranch. Um, ran, well, I don't know, I probably run 10 marathons or so. Got a bunch of horses. This is an old appy I used to have. A couple daughters. Um, they're getting older now. These pictures are getting dated. I was searching for fresh pictures, but anyway, decided better get moving on the lecture rather than delay looking for photos. Um, I used to fly in the Air Force, so I started out in F Force. I was actually looking for an F-15 picture. I'm not that old. I just got into the very, very tail end of the F4, but it was a great airplane. This is actually an airplane I've got. It's in pieces right now, being rebuilt. This shows to the dating. This horse is completely rideable right now. This is Abby, so yeah, I need to get on with the program. In fact, there's Abby right there. So he looks good. Um, I took over a big chunk of property, so it goes basically from the Kinnick River here, Old Glen is here, Republican Road, whatever. It's just short of 100 acres, and it used to have whatever. It's just not managed by anybody. The state thought it was theirs, but they really didn't care. And actually, it turned out to be the property of this entire property. So I took it over. I put a campground on it to kind of transition it to something more useful, but not sure what we're doing with it, but something. I do farming, raise some hogs. That's birthday cake. They used to eat a lot of stuff from the food bank. I'm kind of short on hogs right now, but cattle, cattle tend to wander on me, so I'm till I get my fence situation improved. I'm out of the cattle and actually out of the pigs for a little while. This would be oh, who is that? That's Bo. Thinks it's a circus animal. Raise some pheasants, which given the dogs, bird dogs, more hogs. There's one of the dogs again. But these guys were all free range. So these guys have ended up at South, Seven Glaciers, Spinard Roadhouse, that whole, all those are connected. Some of the other restaurants, Midnight Sun. Anyway, really good quality stuff because they were all free range and, foraged but anyway, that we'll probably be raising pheasants and probably ducks this summer. So we'll see. Like I said, I was military, but whatever. I did some strange things in the military. I ended up getting a PhD. I started that when I was down in Afghanistan, and then I worked for about 10 years for Booz Allen. I was doing strategic communications for them. But anyway, there's a lot of those things that end up on the business side. I sold real estate for a little while. I didn't really care for that. I mean, whatever, you got to apply yourself 100%. And I like to do a lot of different things. So real estate's really not conducive to that. Back when I was in the military, even though I did a bunch of foreign military sales stuff, NAMS down in Luxembourg. I was living in Germany at the time. I lived in Europe for, I don't know, 13, 14 years. I still got a house in Germany. But anyway, I did a lot of whatever, call it influence stuff with the Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. But anyway, and then down to Afghanistan. Kinnick River Ranch is the name of one of my companies now, the primary. This again is just an overview of the property, but when it gets into real estate, some of this was a really complex transaction because this property was so large that it needed to be split up to be purchased properly. It's also not in a flood zone anymore. So there are a lot of strategic things, that I was fortunate in buying this piece of property. So, if you're smart, you can do well. When I bought this piece of property, it's supposed to be 78 acres. It's supposed to be limited to there. But when they surveyed it, they said, nope, it's actually 93. And oh, by the way, the flood zone's going away. And oh, by the way, the bike path's coming here. And my house right in here is going to get condemned. So get to build a new house somewhere out here. Nice. Anyway, but real estate should probably be part of your portfolio as you go forward in terms of personal finance. But we'll talk a fair amount about real estate later on. And then today, though, I'm going to cover a bunch of stuff about investing. But before we jump into that, let's go back and take a look at the syllabus. So the syllabus is posted. It's out there on Blackboard. Let me see if I can get a better view of this. Come on, dude. So the book, I do not care what version you get. Again, keep in line with personal finance. If you're buying the latest version and all these extra things, um, you know, I don't know if you realize it, but a lot of instructors make some money off their textbooks and stuff. And I'm obviously not Jeff Madura, and I don't have a dog in this fight. I prefer that you show some wisdom and perhaps whatever works best for you. There's lots of options out there where you can rent or resell or whatever, but be smart with your money, and you don't need the newest textbook unless it is the best deal. Is basically what I'm saying. The homework will work through it, and it's not that big a deal. Learning outcomes, kind of the boilerplate there. The exams that I mentioned. The interesting thing about the exams that will come up later and people will get confused about is that the first one is actually just done via Blackboard, so it's just dead easy. But there can be some problems with that because people can game things and stuff with Blackboard. So the second exam will be done through the RP Now system, and so it's actually out of my control. It's administered by e-learning, and they put out the test. So we'll talk more about this stuff as I go, but they're both going to be multiple choice. Not that big a deal, and there will be a review beforehand. Some of the RP Now procedures, their phone number, the project that I talked about. So, yeah, fictitious data, just to whatever, because you don't probably know the exact data, nor do you want to be putting a bunch of, personal financial information in a document that's going to be, sent via just regular old email or whatever. 4 to 5 pages. It really does take that long, if not more, to do it. So yeah, if you don't meet that mark, you're not going to get a good grade. You're going to, the flexibility of how you put this thing together is up to you. It's going to be tailored to your needs. So I'm not going to give you a specific template or format, but you can insert charts, screenshots of different things. And there's a whole bunch of information out there that you can get from a bunch of the brokerage companies, or the conglomerates, the Fidelities, the Vanguards, the T. Rowe Price, TD Ameritrade, whoever you're dealing with. Or maybe you'll just pick one. I'm not asking you to sign up with one of those guys. You can get this all, outside of the wall there. You don't have to have an account with it to get all the planning information and stuff you'll look at. Expectations. Yep. You can read through that as you leisure. So the midterm exam, final exam, homework, project, and lecture video comments. So the lecture video comments, that's kind of like an attendance thing, just 5 points each week, and it equates up to 10% of your grade. Schedule. Did I correct this? Yep, this is current. So, yeah, the week of the midterm, that's all we'll do. Spring break, we won't do anything. Finals week, that's whenever you get that thing scheduled. We'll have a review the week prior. But some of the things we'll cover, this kind of marries up with the lectures, with the chapters in the book. So we'll talk, a lot of, I don't know, I don't like to use the term budgeting, but kind of how you're going to allocate your money, and then a lot of investing towards the second half. But it's all intermingled, especially like tax stuff kind of flows throughout it. You can make a lot of money doing things, but the amount you're able to keep depends on how you structure things from the start and how you execute it in terms of timing. So, all right, let's go back to the actual lecture at hand. So what I'm going to try and show here is the time value of money. Time value of money is quite important. Time value of money means that largely your money needs to be working harder than you do, especially in times of inflation. Unfortunately, in this case, this is a Roth IRA. So this is just, don't get too wrapped up about that. We'll talk more about different types of investments later on, but just kind of in a nutshell, some of you may know this, some of you may not, but a Roth IRA is a Roth is just the name of the dude, the senator who came up with it. IRA is an individual retirement account. And the characteristics of a Roth IRA, they're kind of neat. And, there's also normal IRAs, but this, in a particular Roth IRA, what you do is you get money and you invest it in an account. You set it aside for your retirement. The conditions of this, though, are this is money, wherever you got it, that's already had taxes paid on it. So if it's your earnings or whatever, you've already paid your income tax on it, as opposed to a regular individual retirement account where it's pre-tax money. So a Roth IRA is I guess post-tax or whatever you'd want to call it. The taxes have already been paid on it once. And the conditions, the agreement basically that you're making with the government is you're going to invest that money. That money is going to stay in, you're going to leave it in that account and not mess with it or not withdraw it until you're age 59 and a half. If you do that, then the money that you pull out, and most importantly, all the money that you earn on that money, since you've let it sit there for a long time, did the time value of money, all that money that you've earned on it is tax free. So, if it's worth $1 million, literally you have $1 million. Whereas if you have a big chunk in, say, a regular IRA, you pull out $1 million, they're going to want a chunk, probably around 28% or something. It's going to depend on your income at that time, what tax bracket you're in, all the rest of that. We'll talk about tax brackets and all that other stuff. So anyway, we kind of went down a rabbit hole there, but in this case, this guy's making 5%. I would not be happy with that given the current problems. I mean, whatever. I'm not happy with the current economy. Let's just say that, because the stock market is flat to declining and inflation is rampant. So if you are only making 5%, you're losing, a couple percent. Say inflation's 7% or probably quite a bit higher now. The buying power of your money is being eroded horrifically. So let's say you got 100 grand at the end of the year, you're going to have with 5%, and this is going to be compounded on a more rapid amount. But let's say it's, we'll talk about compounding here in a second. But anyway, let's say your 100,000 is now worth 107,000, or in real dollars. You've got $107,000 in the bank. Unfortunately, you can't buy what you could have bought in the first part of the year with 100 grand because of inflation. You still have the dollars, but the buying power of it's been eroded. So we're covering a lot of topics right here. Once in a while, you may hear a dog in the back. I got a ton of them. I breed those Vizslas, and it's about minus 16 today, so they're a little stir crazy. So they'll be acting up until they get a proper walk. So anyway, this chart, this guy, a friend of mine, he prepared this chart, and he used a couple different examples. So he used a 5%, an 8%, and a 10%. And some of you may be thinking the 10%, wow, that's pretty optimistic. Actually, traditionally, the stock market does get about 10% per year and has, since the turn of last century. So long time. Now, there's going to be years like this year where it's probably not going to get the 10%, but there's going to be other years where it gets 15 or 20. So we're talking over the average, it gets about 10%. But anyway, the way he put this chart together, and we'll look at this real quick, is this is their age. This is the investment category here in terms of how much money they're going to be putting in. This is the value at age 65, and this is their return on investment. So this investment category is kind of working backwards. Let's say you started at age 18 and you started contributing money. And in this case, the guy, where is it? Yeah, 5,500 per year. So basically, $500 every month, except for one. You know, if you did every month, it'd be 6,000. So anyway, 5,500 per year until age 50, and then 6,500. So a little bit more until age 65. And if you started at age 18, by the time you got to age 65, you would have put in $273,000 in all those $5,500 payments. The value of that is $5.3 million. So in terms of dollars, what you put in was 273,000, and what you end up, because of the time value of money, because of compound interest, you end up with $5.3 million. So that, rate of return is pretty damn good. So that's what we're trying to work at. And so when I talk about interest and compound interest means that you're earning interest on interest. So again, getting back to our example, let's say somebody is going to pay you simple interest, right? Simple interest implies that there's no compounding. So if somebody's going to pay you 10% interest over a year, and let's say you have $100, at the end of that year, you would have 110,000. If they're paying you not simple interest, but compound interest, you're going to have somewhat more. We can go in the charts or use a calculator and figure out what it's going to be. But the reason why compound interest would be higher is what you do when you're calculating compound interest, and you don't have to do this, by hand. There's plenty of programs and models that will do this for you. But what you do is you divide that 10% up into 365 increments, and you come up with some fractional percent, and that's the amount of interest you earn each day. So on the only day that you have just $100 is the first day. The second day you have $100 plus some, couple pennies in there. And then the third day, you have $100 plus, 20 cents. Well, this starts adding up. And so, like, let's say at the end of the week, you have, $100 and whatever, maybe $101 at some point in the near future. Now you're earning interest not on $100, but you're earning interest on that new amount. You're earning interest on interest. So you're getting towards the end of the year, you're earning interest not on $110, you're earning interest on, say, $115, $120. And so that interest amount is larger. Well, you expand that out over a whole bunch of years, which these charts do, and it just goes exponential, and you just, it doesn't, whatever, our brains don't work that way. And so that's why you're going, wait a minute, I only invested 273,000, but it's worth 5.3 million. That's incredible. Whereas, let's say this, slow starter here, in a whatever, not a very strong swimmer. This person, starts late. They're 61. They invest 26 grand, and they're doing fine. But that 26 grand is only turned into 33,000. I mean, that's not a great increase. But they didn't give it much time to work. They gave it like 4 years. That's not good. Give it more time. So when we're talking about student loans, if you say, well, I'm going to do my student loans and I want a new truck and I want a whatever, and I'm going to save for retirement at some point, well, guess what? You wait till you're 40 and you ended up with $629,000. Well, 630, close enough. Anyway, you can't really retire on 630,000. That's not great. You're going to need to do something else. You're going to maybe need to keep working or have some other investments. Whereas if you would have, stuck to the plan and maybe got through college and, started investing your $500 a month, 3 million, yeah, I could get by. Most of us could get by just fine on 3 million bucks in a nest egg, just living off the interest. 3 million bucks, you could draw 30 grand from that, plus, whatever else you have, probably hopefully have your house paid off by then. You have not a lot of bills, maybe other things going on, but now you're in the realm that you could deal with it. And also this $500 per month. When you're in your peak earning years, when you're in your 40s, 50s, you're probably putting away more than $500 a month into retirement savings. You probably have a plan with your employer where you're doing some sort of match and you're putting in, let's say 5, 10% of your income. And so these numbers are going to be higher, but it's not going to be as powerful because you didn't give as much time to work. So anyway, time value of money. I covered a lot right there, but that is, if you understand time value of money, you have a huge leg up on personal finance, because what works for you also works against you. If you have, a big chunk of money out on your credit card and you're being charged 18, 20% interest on it, all these numbers, all this compounding work exactly the same, but against you. And that's why you will be, destined to be poor for your entire life. So it's not about, greed and wealth and all that, but it is about not having to live from paycheck to paycheck. So just a blow up of that, showing some numbers. So yeah, did I say 194, 1942%? So anyway, those charts are there. I'll put the Excels out there, the raw files. You can go through and scroll through them. It's not magic. It's just that's the way it works, categories. So value, return on investment, cost of delay. So he actually tells you, if you wait, whatever, just try not to do that. Try not to ring up a bunch of debts. Try not to live too lavish a lifestyle when you're younger, because if you can get your spending under control, then you're going to be much better set up later in life. All right. Try not to be too preachy here. Personal finance, just as we're jumping right back into the book. This is the first chapter. So I think we could kind of define this. The test is not going to be a set of definitions. We'll have a good review of what's going to be on the test. So don't get too wrapped up. You don't have to, make flashcards or anything like that. Financial plan, financial goals, spending, financing. Yep. Opportunity cost. This will be on the test. I can absolutely promise you that. Opportunity cost, liquidity, other things. And this comes back around to what I started with in terms of being able to save. If you're somebody who says, well, yeah, I don't have much money, but I go to whatever Starbucks, Pilates or something, and yeah, I spend probably 10, $15 a day there. If you do that, and then you get to the end of the month and you don't have any money to save, you kind of, maybe didn't make the best decision. I mean, I'm not saying to scrimp on everything, but look at certain things and go, okay, I didn't have the $300 I wanted to save, but I did have the $300 for something else. So, that's an opportunity cost. If you've got a brand new car, and I'm not saying especially given cold weather and everything else, but if you've got whatever, maybe something well in excess of what your needs are, by having that vehicle, a new one every couple 3 years, you're giving up a lot. And whatever. I'm huge on real estate. Real estate is an appreciating asset. Vehicles, credit cards, all that stuff is just appreciating. The value goes down over time, whereas real estate and other things, I'm a big spender when it comes to real estate and things that appreciate, or whatever classic cars I used to be into, but that doesn't really work so well in Alaska. But anyway, there are ways to have some nice things and not have things that just depreciate down to nothing in a heartbeat. Yep, everything has an opportunity cost. Judge the advice of financial advisors. Yeah, you got to be very careful, in that a lot of financial advisors that are dual-rolled as a salesman may not have your best interest at heart. You see that a lot in insurance and other things where they're on a commission and then they're giving you advice. Well, That's, the term would be fiduciary advice would be what you're after. Somebody who only has your best interest, your interest at heart, as opposed to a commission. Um, to be a fee for services kind of, somebody who's paid like a lawyer, paid by the hour to provide financial advice. That's a nice situation because then you've got somebody who doesn't have any skin in the game. They will hopefully give you the best advice because they don't stand to profit from selling you something you don't need. Tax planning. So we'll talk a lot about taxes, but it can greatly affect the amount of money you're able to keep. Liquidity, just like opportunity cost, something we'll really talk about. You need liquidity. Liquidity means having access to cash. Somebody can have $1 million house, but they can't pay their taxes. They've got a serious liquidity problem. Somebody who, businesses, you see businesses that have a great product and all of a sudden they're out of business because they didn't have the cash flow to cover day-to-day operations. And so in spite of their, strong strategic position, they crumbled. Large purchases, how to get that done. Obviously, credit cards are super useful. I use a credit card for everything, but I'm a convenience user. I pay off the balance every month, so I get all the perks without any of the downside. Protecting your assets and income, so insurance. That's kind of an interesting topic, and there's certain things that you need insurance for, and then like life insurance. When you get to be my age, if you still have life insurance, you're not making the smartest decisions from a financial perspective. There comes a point in your time, especially in terms of life insurance, where it's no longer required and it's too expensive to purchase, at least the type that you would want to purchase. Investing your money, we'll talk about that. And then retirement and estate planning, which all ties back into the front part in terms of tax planning and everything else. Just because you put money away for retirement doesn't mean that it's untouchable. You don't want to take a withdrawal of that money, but man, I take loans against my retirement all the time, and I'm taking loans, against my own money. So I earn the interest, and there's no penalties or anything involved in it. In fact, it's transparent to the IRS. There's no reporting. They do not know and do not care. So anyway, budgeting. Assets and liabilities, what you own and what you owe. So again, somebody says, "Oh, I've got $1 million home." Perhaps it's the bank who actually has that home. You've got the liability, you're paying on it, and if you pay on it for 30 years or whatever, you may be the one to own it. But at this point, it's in the liability category. At least the loan is. And I'm not one of these people who says, run out and pay off the home. I specifically, if you have a low interest rate, you're essentially renting the money at a very low price. Mortgages and stuff. I've got some that are down below 3%. So if I anticipate making 10% in investments, 10% or more, and I can use somebody's money that they're loaning to me at 2.75, I'm not no hurry to pay it back. Plus, I get to write off that interest. So anyway, net worth, you figure out your net worth by dividing or subtracting your assets from liabilities. Hopefully, it's a positive number, but yeah, sometimes it's negative. So how budgeting affects savings? Yep. Different people. Sometimes you end up with marriages that you have one of each, and that can be a problem. But yeah, you need a balance. It's not about greed, but it is about, if you don't worry about money, you're going to have to worry about money because you're going to, be in a bad situation, especially now. Things are so screwed up that if you don't have a good financial plan, you may be in a situation where you're job locked, where you can't quit your job, you can't do anything, you need the health care, you just give up so much freedom. So, I mean, and you may end up in that situation regardless, but at least we'll plan to try to avoid it. Liquidity, we talked about that. Cash, basically, funds to cover money management. short-term, long-term investments. Obviously, short-term investments, there's sort of a trade-off between liquidity and earning, um, you know, large money in investments. Um, Stock market right now, I mean, I'll do well in the long term, but if I was to sell everything right now, I'm down a bit. So I mean, not overall, but there's a lot of investments that go up and down. I've got a pretty large amount of crypto, and I'm certainly not selling that now, but I'm not worried a bit. I mean, I think it's going to come right back up as you know history shows you. It's just a lot of things are cyclical, and so having money kind of on hand, having the liquidity means that you don't need to sell any of these long-term investments at the wrong time. Credit management. So not all credit's the same. Like I say, I have absolutely no issues with mortgage credit if it's at a good rate, but you should not have any outstanding credit on your credit cards if at all possible. So keep some money, insured credit, access to money. Yep. So, a lot of times there's absolutely no problem with rolling large amounts of money onto a credit card. In fact, if there's no, convenience fee or any fee associated with it, I'll put whatever I can on the credit card as long as you get it paid off within that month. I bought some fencing recently. It was 31 grand on a credit card and then just pay it off and all those miles. If you find a merchant who's silly enough to accept a credit card, then you should maybe take advantage of it. Why I mean silly is that, I also accept credit cards in my business, and credit cards, the company, Square or whoever you're set up with, will typically charge somewhere around 3%. And if it's American Express, maybe 4%. So somebody does something, you charge them $100, you only get 96 or 97 bucks over the long run. That's not good. So, but there's a lot to that. We'll talk more about it. So loans, tuition, car, house, managing loans. So, a car versus a house. Sometimes there's incentives that are offered with mortgage loans or with car loans, auto loans. And so rather than them offering you a better price, they'll, offer a, lower rate. So you just have to be smart about it. How much can you afford to borrow? Probably more than you should, actually. You know, Maturity of the loan, selecting a loan with competitive interest rate. Yeah. You know, Another good thing about real estate is you can always refinance, when it makes sense to do so, whereas other loans, no. And mortgage rates are tax deductible. College tuition under certain cases. But there's lots of reasons to finance. I mean, especially with real estate, you kind of have to. If you try to save up cash to buy the real estate, well, the property you're interested in is probably going to appreciate away from you. It's probably going to, you'll probably never end up with enough cash to purchase it if you tried to wait and do it. And oh, by the way, while you're doing that, if you're in a rental situation, you're giving up all the tax benefits of being a homeowner. So there's a lot to it. We'll talk about real estate. We'll talk about other loans as well. Insurance planning. So certain things, obviously, you have a requirement to have automotive liability insurance. Homeowners insurance, typically a requirement as well because, again, it's typically not at your home, so the lender wants to make sure they're insured on both of these. There is a certain point, though. Let's say you got an older vehicle and you think you're a careful driver and the rest of that. You may decide to drop collision, meaning if you wreck the vehicle and it's your fault, you don't get paid. But by doing so, maybe you save quite a bit of money on the premium. So that's a judgment you'll have to make. Health insurance. Health insurance is a weird thing. It's not really even insurance anymore. So, there's pre-existing conditions. There's other things that don't fall into the realm of insurance. And, again, as you know, the system is quite a mess. Hopefully, you've got an employer-sponsored insurance plan, so you're getting it at a better rate. But if you're having to go out on one of the government plans and stuff, it can be very difficult. Disability and life insurance to protect your income to a certain extent. Yes, life insurance is actually pretty easy to get, especially when you're young, but it's not, there's some things that go into it in terms of determining how much insurance you need. Um, Plan for investing. Earn a high return, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate. Yep. So, yeah, most people tend to be very cautious with investing. And for a lot of you that are younger, I'm not saying you to gamble or speculate, but you are in a position where you can make investments in, say, stocks and other things. And if it's a cyclical kind of company, your life and your time of investment is long enough to where you can ride things out. They say as you get older, you should be in more conservative investments because you don't have as much time for markets to recover. But anyway, we'll discuss that in great detail. The one thing though, the one risk that most people don't really calculate is when people say, well, I don't want to put money in the market because it's too risky, but yet they're willing to accept inflation just killing them year after year, pretty soon to where they're saving and saving their 100,000 and now it's up to 110,000, but unfortunately 110,000 will, you know, not get you by for a month or something, if inflation gets crazy. I lived in Turkey for a number of years, and Turkey is, famous for having incredible inflation, and it was just a whole different mindset. And when you live in a society like that, I'm not saying the United States is going to stay in a high inflation rate, but anyway, if you think you're going to put money in a savings account and even call that an investment, I think you're fooling yourself because it's that's just not sustainable since the money's just going to be essentially eroding away. Anyway, retirement and estate planning. So again, retirement planning is kind of the nest egg where everything is held in my mind, and then I draw back upon that, and I've bought a number of pieces of real estate and held them under my IRA, which most tax people aren't familiar with, but it can be done. You can enjoy property and money that's held in your retirement account by taking loans against it and doing other things and still maintaining those investments. Estate planning deals with how things are going to be passed on, so to your children or your heirs or beneficiaries, however you're set up. But if you do it improperly, a big chunk of it will just end up being going to taxes. If you do it properly, then it's almost transparent. Financial plan. So, yeah, wealth generation is part of it. Just the peace of mind that you'd have if you not only have a better life, but also, you can move on and focus your life on more important things rather than obsessing about, how you're going to find money to pay the rent or the mortgage. Inflows, outflows, budgeting, and liquidity. So the video for this week is going to be this guy. He's kind of crazy. He's got these hands that he just flails around and he talks in a very interesting manner. He's trying to sell some sort of book, but he talks about a concept called paying yourself first. And that's why the video was selected, because the concept of let's say somebody says they're going to put away 10% of their income into savings. Well, if you wait till the end of the month, that 10% is probably going to be gone. Or somebody just says, "Oh, I'm going to put away all my extra money at the end of the month into investments." Again, that money's going to probably disappear. Whereas, let's say you're, making $1,000 and you say, "I'm going to invest 10%." And so on the day you get your paycheck, you just get that 10%, that $100, and it's automatically allotted in your investment account. um, that's going to be a winning strategy because number one, it's out of mind, out of sight. That money's going to be out of the checking account. You're not going to be worrying about, oh, do I have enough money? Do I? No, you've already paid basically a bill that was your savings, and so it's going to be much more consistent. And then if you have a bunch of money left at the end of the month, maybe you can do something else with it. Maybe buy crypto or something like that that's maybe a little bit more speculative, but has a potential for a higher return as opposed to your, you know, investment money that's probably going to be a more of a traditional investment. But anyway, I'm not going to tell you how to do that. Um, Budgeting allows you to plan cash receive. Yeah, different people have budgeting things. I don't do a budget myself, but like I said, I do put everything on credit cards, and therefore, at the end of the month, I can look back at my credit card statement and see number one, checking for fraud and other things, but also kind of look and see where all the money went, and uh, and then accruing a great number of miles in the process. And then since I've got a business, um, you know, just about everything I do is some sort of business expense because, that's the way I've structured it. I've got horses, I've got dogs, I've got whatever, but those are all business related. So that's how you want to structure things to make sure everything is kind of a write off. And it's legitimate, there's money to be made in some of those areas, maybe not a great deal, but anyway, that's how you want to set it up. So some people set up a budget, and I personally, that just doesn't work for me. I'm not that methodical. I'm not that disciplined to do that. But I can go back and look and see, you know, what happened and what went into what category and then make some changes on the next month. So income, job, cash, yep, liquidity. So well, you're going to get to a point, hopefully, where your checking account should not have a vast amount of money in it. That's not a good strategy because that's very vulnerable for identity theft and the rest of it, and it's just burning a hole in your pocket when it's sitting there in an account. So I think the best strategy that I've always done is to have a brokerage account with some sort of investment house. Pick one, and then set some limit on your checking account, how much money you want to keep in that account. I don't know, depends on your needs, but 5, 6 thousand bucks is probably reasonable. And if there's any excess of that, transfer it over to the brokerage account. The brokerage account should not have much activity going on there, so it's very easy to detect fraud. You probably got some, two-factor authentication set up on it. So, and then it's also, viewed as being an investment. And then, you can invest that stuff directly into mutual funds or stock market or whatever, or you can let it sit there and accumulate and try and time, a dip or something like that, which, whatever. Good luck with that. Very, very smart people have no success, no luck at market timing, but we all want to give it a try and whatever. I'm not going to argue with it. So anyway, if you keep some money in that account, that's great. Your 5, 6 thousand in your checking account should be able to weather most emergencies. You've got that credit card, but your credit card balance is all paid off. So if the car breaks or something like that, you roll that expense onto the credit card, you pay it off by the end of the month. And then you may also have in that brokerage account maybe an emergency fund with another, 5 grand or something just to be able to draw to pay off that credit card if you don't have money available to do that. So you don't want to, the reason to use a credit card for emergency fund is just because of the ease of doing it, but it's not a good strategy if you're going to roll that balance month to month. Get it paid off within the terms, and you won't pay any interest on it. Okay. Should you lease a car? Probably not. Should you borrow more money to purchase a car? Again, vehicle decisions up here. I know I had young kids at one point. The weather up here is not such that you necessarily want to be driving a beater all the time. You may not have mechanical skills, so I drive a a horrific little beater with a heater, but that's because I can fix it. And also, if it breaks, I just whatever roll to the side of the road, call an Uber, and get one of my other trucks. I got a bunch of farm trucks, so I always have vehicles, and so but you know, driving back and forth to I live in the valley and driving back and forth to Anchorage or whatever and just putting needless miles on a car is not something. Plus when it's this cold, I feel bad starting any car and the beater with the heater just takes it. It's not good for vehicles to start them without a heater, without the rest of it, but that car it's expendable. So, anyway, how long a period? What's the ideal source? And I will discuss more about other places that you can get money from. And again, one of the best is borrowing against your own retirement savings. I've done it probably 15, 20 times throughout my life, and it by far is the best and the cheapest source of funds. Okay, protecting your wealth. Yep. Insurance. Since we're rolling backwards here. Sorry. Retirement estate planning. We'll talk more about this. Sorry. PowerPoint's not cooperating. Everything is integrated. And source or use of cash, obviously. Sources of cash. There's some temporary things, but really learning to live within your means is how you get things done. You know, establishing some budget, some control, some restraint early on is the way you get things done. Because all these other things, you can do it maybe once to get yourself through some crisis, but you're going to be right back at it, and then that whatever you sold is not going to be available anymore. So learning to live within your means is the most important part, and that whole strategy of paying yourself first is huge. Yep, they're just kind of reviewing it again. Sorry for the redundancy here. It's just the way the book's laid out. Yeah, if you're one of these people who's not a good saver or can't, show restraint, you got to work on that. Yeah, it's just going to be hitting you every month until you figure it out. So, learn to live within your means early, learn to show some discipline, learn to be a smart shopper, and you know, just saying, "Oh, I'm a bad saver," and just blowing all your money is going to cause other psychological problems later on. The whole rent versus, I will always be a big proponent of buying a piece of property when you can. The whole roommate, non-roommate, that kind of runs its own life. Anybody who's had a roommate for a certain length of time realizes that, especially if it's just a roommate rather than a spouse or a partner, that's a different thing. But yeah, you'll learn that that's a necessity at a certain point. Car payments, I've hit that enough. Credit card bills, yep, I talked about that. Yeah, so they're just reviewing things we've already hit on. So this is going to be the homework. So not a big deal. They're going to talk about cash flow stuff. Again, you don't turn in the homework each week, so you won't even see a place for it to go on Blackboard. As we get close to the exam, there'll be a place for you to turn in all your homework, and there'll be a compilation of all these different assignments that are due. Um, we kind of talked about this. Oh, age 24, we didn't talk about that. I know if you start at 18, it's 5.3 million. If you start at age 24, like you actually, were not able to start saving till then. Again, that's still 24 is great, but it's not going to be 5.3, but it's going to be close. It's going to be multi millions, that's for sure. And that's pretty much it. So you'll see this thing posted. Like I say, you'll see just the raw PowerPoint out there. You'll see this link to this video lecture. You'll see the thing I talked about with the guy, talking about pay yourself first and selling his book. Obviously you don't need to follow any of those links, but what he's talking about in terms of being a disciplined saver is good info. So, and if you have any questions, let me know.